Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. I'm Misty Reed, your host for today. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time. The 2020 census is getting close. In April, we marked the one-year-out milestone with an operational press briefing highlighting our readiness, as well as our partners' commitment to a complete and accurate census. It was an exciting event, and I hope some of you viewed the live stream. If you were unable to watch, it is archived on our website. We provided numerous operational milestones at that event, but we know that you need information tailored to your work. The Census Bureau cannot reach everyone on its own. A complete and accurate count is possible only in collaboration with you and the work that you do every day. We aim to support your efforts to reach and motivate your stakeholders and communities through this webinar. Today's webinar will start with a presentation, then we will address some of your questions. Following today's webinar, we will provide any materials discussed by email using the email address with which you registered. The webinar will also be archived on our website for future reference. Before I turn it over to our presenter, I have a few logistical announcements. If you have questions, please submit them in the Q&A box in your window. We will answer as many as we can in writing and answer some verbally at the end of the webinar. If you've joined by computer and through the phone line, please note there is a 30 to 60 second delay on the webinar when compared to the phone line. So what you hear will not match what you see on the computer. We recommend you join either by computer or by phone. This webinar is being recorded, and we will post it online for those who want to revisit it or who weren't able to join today. To access captions for today's webinar, please see our announcement link. Captions will open in a separate window once you click on that link. Today's presenter is Jen Shopcorn, the Census Bureau's Senior Advisor for Communications. She has an extensive strategic communications background and has been part of the team building the creative for the 2020 Census advertising campaign. Jen?
Thank you, Misty. Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm going to walk through what the public will experience and when, from now through the conclusion of the 2020 census. At the Census Bureau, we often speak about what we're doing from an operational and outreach perspective. However, we know that all of those activities aren't necessarily experienced by the general public. To help you plan your communications and outreach work, I'd like to spend some time today painting a picture of what the public will experience and when. Then, I'll provide an overview of the communications campaign, including our research and testing schedule, content development schedule, media buying process, what we're doing now, what's coming next, and most importantly, how you can get involved. Right now, the public hears about the 2020 census through press articles, job announcements, and local partner or complete count committee outreach. You may have seen, as Misty mentioned, some activity around our April 1st one-year out event. You probably saw a surge in 2020 census news articles and social media. That content came from the Census Bureau and from many of you. We can't thank you enough for your engagement around that milestone. It was a really great example of how we can all work together to get the word out about the 2020 census. The volume of content the public will see between now and next year is going to steadily grow. We aim for this webinar to be a source of information for you to help grow and inform your outreach and promotion of the 2020 census. Our paid advertising campaign doesn't start until January. However, between now and January, we will increase our communications with the public through all of our channels, and we hope you will too. In August, in some areas, the public will experience its first direct contact with Census Bureau employees. Those employees will be in neighborhoods checking local addresses against our master list for one final scrub to make sure we know where to count people. The employees will be credentialed. It's going to be very important during this time that we work together to clarify to the public that this is not the actual count. It's just prep work, albeit important prep work, but just prep work. We certainly wouldn't want anyone to interact with a census worker during this time and mistake that interaction for having completed the census. This effort, called address canvassing, will last until October. Right after that, we'll start our major recruitment effort for census takers. This is one place where you can be incredibly valuable to the Census Bureau and to the public in helping get the word out about those census jobs, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Our paid advertising campaign launches in January of 2020 with what we call our awareness phase, which is really just a designation of the type of messages we will highlight. Our Census Barriers, Attitudes, and Motivators study, about which I'll speak more in a minute, demonstrated that the public lacks a general knowledge about the census, including its purpose and benefits. Our initial advertising and outreach will focus on providing that education. notably the benefits that a complete and accurate census provides to communities. It's been shown that discussing those benefits helps motivate response. And you'll see a lot of that in the advertising throughout the campaign. Many message themes will be pulled from the awareness phase into what we call the motivation phase. The motivation phase of our advertising campaign will coincide with when people can respond, and it has very strong calls to action aiming to get people to respond on their own. After that, we transition into what we call the reminder phase, and that phase coincides with when census takers begin visiting households that haven't responded on their own. In 2020, we have an online response option, and I'll discuss more about that in a moment. And so we want to encourage the public to respond on their own during this time. You'll see new themes and stronger calls to action as the campaign progresses through these phases. So that brings us to March 2020, when the public will receive invitations to respond to the 2020 census. There are 3 ways the public can respond: online, by phone, and by mail. And mail is the same as a paper form. If someone chooses to respond online, that website will be mobile friendly, and it will be available in 13 languages. You see them listed here on the slide, but I'll read them for those on the phone: English, Spanish, Simplified Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Russian, Arabic, Tagalog, Polish, French, Haitian Creole, Portuguese, and Japanese. If someone wants to respond by the phone, those same 13 languages are also available by phone, with one small exception. We will have phone lines available in Mandarin and Cantonese. In selecting languages that we would support, we based it on data. If we are supporting a language, it means that 60,000 households or more speak one of those languages, but they do not speak English very well. So said another way, there could be someone who speaks a language, and there could be over 60,000 of those households, but they also speak English very well, and so they're able to rely on the English response options, so those languages aren't supported. As with past censuses, we'll also have a paper response option. The form will be available only in English and Spanish. We have numerous ways to support other languages that we don't have available directly in response. We have print and video language guides in 59 non-English languages that'll help people respond. That includes guides in large print, American Sign Language, and Braille. And we also have TTY, TDD phone availability. I want to stress that regardless of the mode selected, all response modes are secure, and you will see that message reinforced in all of our advertising and outreach. So back to that timeline. The public will receive their first invitation to respond somewhere between March 12th and 20th. Roughly 80% of households in the country will receive an invitation that invites them to respond online and also lists phone numbers that they can call for help or to respond. The remaining 20% of households will receive an invitation and a paper form. Which areas are included in the 80% versus the 20% has not been finalized yet. I know that that is information that a lot of people are excited to have in hand to guide their work, but we are waiting to finalize these designations so we can use the most up-to-date information to best serve the public. We're using several data sources to make that determination, including internet access, the likelihood of certain populations to respond online versus paper. After that first mail, that first invitation, everyone will then receive a first reminder letter. It's really the second piece of mail that they'll get from the Census Bureau. That second piece of mail, which is the first reminder, is already prepped and already in the mail queue when the first invitation letter goes out. So even if someone responds online the very first day they get that very first piece of mail from us inviting them to respond, they will automatically receive the second piece of mail from us because we can't remove that household from the list of households receiving that second piece of mail. So people have gotten an invitation and then they've gotten a reminder, which is the second piece of mail. After that, they will receive a third piece of mail from us that is a postcard reminding them to respond. If they still haven't responded, they will get a fourth piece of mail, And in that fourth piece of mail, there will be a paper questionnaire. And this is a really important point I want to highlight. This means that even if a household does not receive a paper form in the first invitation they get from us, they will eventually receive a paper form if they don't respond on their own, online or by phone. Everyone who wants to respond by paper will have the opportunity to do so. This has been a point of confusion, so I want to stress that. And I'm actually going to take a second to clarify this with an example. Let's say someone is in the 80% of households that will be encouraged to respond online. So that first piece of mail they get from us will not have a paper form. If at that point they were to call the Census Bureau and request a paper form, we will not be in a position to send one to them on demand. They could call and they could provide their information over the phone, or they could respond online. However, if they prefer paper, they will have to wait until that fourth piece of mail comes when they will receive a paper form. After that fourth piece of mail that includes the paper form, if people still haven't responded on their own, they will get one last reminder from us. So that's 5 pieces of mail total. At that point, we will begin sending census takers to households that haven't responded to help them respond. The really wonderful thing about the 2020 census is with the online and phone response options, people can continue to respond on their own even once we start sending census takers out. However, the longer they wait to respond, the more likely it is that a census taker will visit, even if they have submitted a response. If people want to avoid an in-person visit, they should respond as early as possible. The big takeaway here, I think, is that everyone in the country will get to choose whether they respond online, by phone, or by mail. And everyone will have the option to respond on paper, even if they don't receive a paper form in that first piece of mail that they get from us. So back to that timeline. Everyone has received their initial invitation and subsequent ones if they haven't responded. And at the same time, there's going to be a huge increase in outreach and advertising. For those who haven't responded on their own, as I mentioned, we'll send census takers to help them respond, and that starts in mid-May, and those visits will continue through about mid-August. Following that, the communications and outreach campaign will start to die down a little bit, but they will see some advertising from the Census Bureau thanking them for participating. And then when we release the results from the 2020 census, we will advertise those results and have a pretty sizable communications campaign around that. So that's an overview of what the public will experience and when. And now I'm actually going to dive into our communications campaign in detail. And this is my favorite subject. I spent a lot of time working on this. Our campaign is designed to motivate response. The more people who respond on their own, the more accurate the census will be and the less expensive it will be. Our communications campaign will be in the same 13 languages that I mentioned before that are in which we're making online and phone response available. So that is 13 languages of TV ads, radio ads, and print ads, and digital. The first stage of our communications campaign was actually a really large research effort that examined what the public knows about the census, what motivates them to respond, what prevents them from responding. That research included a survey called the Census Barriers, Attitudes, and Motivators Survey. We like acronyms in the government, so we call it CBAMS. And that is the foundation of our entire campaign. Every message we are building and every TV commercial, radio commercial, print or digital ad is based on what we learned in that research. I want to take note of this because it's a pretty incredible process and it actually goes far beyond the advertising industry standard and beyond what we did here at the Census Bureau for the 2010 census advertising campaign. Our ultimate goal is to talk to the right people with the right message at the right time and in the right place, whether that is a TV ad or radio ad, a print ad, advertising on a digital channel, or even through community relationships and other influencers. And CBAMS tells us how to do that. Not only do we have our research, but we can also take into account research that others conducted. Several nonprofit and advocacy organizations conducted smaller scale communications research examining the same themes of knowledge about the census, barriers to completing it, motivators to completing it, and that research was geared towards the specific populations with whom they work. We're really thankful for and actually very proud of the exchanges we had with all of those groups. We shared moderator guides, research plans, and results. We had several convenings. We're very pleased that all of the research had similar findings and validated everyone's work. We have extensive reports about the findings from this research available on our website, and we'll provide those links as a follow-up to today's webinar. But some key takeaways I want to highlight, because they've really driven the construction of our creative campaign, are that general knowledge about the census is low. It's every 10 years, and people aren't focusing on it for the entire decade. There are multiple reasons that people don't respond to the census. Key among those are privacy concerns, distrust of the government, and a real lack of understanding that the census actually makes a difference in their lives. Across all audiences, the biggest way to motivate someone is to respond is to explain how responding benefits their community. Getting as granular and tangible as possible here is really important. Instead of talking generally about the census data impacting funding for roads, schools, and hospitals, it's really important to personalize the benefit to something like after-school programs, Head Start, or daycare, if you're talking to an audience, for example, that cares about children. The way the message is delivered and who delivers it are also important, but the right channels and messengers vary by audience, and this is where the research was really important. Who those trusted messengers, or trusted voices as we call them, who they are varies across audiences and communities. So for some communities, it's great to have a celebrity be the voice delivering the message. In others, it means anyone but a paid celebrity. In some, it's the female head of the family, and in others, it's a religious or community organization leader. So that was a lot of research to cull through, and I am forever thankful to the team that did. They worked really hard. We examined that research and went through a very rigorous process to distill it into big overarching ideas that could serve as our campaign theme. That theme, or as it's called in the advertising industry, the platform, is something that for the census needed to resonate across all languages and audiences. We considered dozens of themes, refined them, and eventually narrowed them down to 3, and we took those 3 possible themes and tested them both qualitatively and quantitatively. Based on the testing results, we selected what I hope everyone has seen before, is our platform and tagline called Shape Your Future, Start Here. The platform was selected because it was the best, it performed the best in our testing. It is aspirational and it's forward-looking, which is very appropriate to the census, which informs the next 10 years of community and business decisions. It also provides the space to address response barriers and motivators. So in March, we released that campaign platform and tagline. We also released what's called our logo lockup, which is our logo paired with the tagline. We put out a very important document that I want to highlight for you. It's our usage guidelines of how to correctly use those materials. We know that you will use your own taglines and branding, but we encourage you to also use ours and even co-brand. And those usage guidelines include templates explaining how to co-brand with our 2020 tagline. As you are creating outreach and communications materials, particularly for digital engagement, we encourage the use of hashtags like hashtag Shape Your Future and hashtag 2020 Census so the public can access information about the 2020 census holistically. So we selected our platform and tagline and we dove right into creative development. As I mentioned before, I'm on the team that is working with our communications contractor, Team Y&R, to create all of that advertising content. VML Y&R is an advertising agency that's been around for decades. Team Y&R is the combination of that global advertising agency and several smaller agencies that focus on specific multicultural audiences. And together, that whole group has designed creative content for TV, radio, digital, print. And when I say print, I mean everything from magazines to billboards on the highway to bus stop signs. And we've created all of that for every audience. That's an extremely important point I actually want to take a second to highlight. Our campaign is designated to motivating every person living in this country to respond to the 2020 census on their own. That means that our messages have to be diverse and they have to be based on data. Remember, we have that extensive CBAMS research behind every message we built. We're a data agency, and we built our creative campaign on data. We aren't guessing what people want to hear or what messages will resonate. We're relying on the research we conducted with real people across the country to guide that work. Not only is our campaign designed to reach every person, but front and center in our mind is ensuring that our campaign really resonates with those who are least likely to respond on their own. At the Census Bureau, we call these groups hard to count. And to us, that term means those who are, among other things, young children, highly mobile, meaning they move around a lot, non-English speakers, low income, individuals experiencing homelessness or living in non-traditional housing or renting, and racial and ethnic minorities. We have numerous operations geared towards counting those who aren't likely to respond on their own, everything from how we count those experiencing homelessness, to those who live a mobile lifestyle, to those who speak multiple languages or do not speak English. But we also knew our communications campaign needed to focus on those populations, and we've been fortunate to have the research by external groups and our multicultural agency experts at the table as we develop our advertising. In March, we sent hundreds of pieces of creative content into testing, including TV, radio, print, and digital ads. As we did with the research with CBAMs, we're conducting testing that goes far beyond the industry standard. In 2010, we didn't even undertake testing at this stage. Our creative testing in March, or that started in March, it went through about early May, included 122 focus groups and 130 qualitative online participants. We also had a few smaller conversations to complement those focus groups and the qualitative work, and we had those conversations with experts and leaders in their community to get their feedback. We synthesized the results and we adjusted the ads based on what we heard from focus group participants. Once our creative content is finalized, we have to figure out where we're going to put it, what network to air it on, in association with what TV program, at what time of day, so that we reach the audience that the commercial was intended to reach. That process is actually already in motion. We started it right after that April 1st one-year milestone. On April 3rd of this year, we had, actually Team Y&R had a media vendor day in New York City, and then they had a second session in Puerto Rico on April 5th. And at these sessions, media vendors had the opportunity to submit proposals for consideration for the 2020 Census paid media campaign. Vendors of all sizes submitted proposals as part of 6 different requests for proposals: television, radio, out of home, that's things like billboards and bus stops, print, magazine, print, newspaper, and digital direct content. The 2020 Census paid media negotiations are occurring in 2 phases. First, in the beginning of April, Team Y&R entered the media upfront market. That's an industry-wide event where they are currently negotiating multi-platform deals with large broadcast companies to receive the best pricing, placements, and added value for the campaign. Negotiations and commitments for all other media, such as local TV, radio, magazines, newspaper, digital, and outdoor, will be finalized in late 2019. Currently, Team Y&R is evaluating over 2,000 proposals submitted through this process, which ended on the 22nd of May. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about that whole process, you can find information on our website, and we'll make sure to include the link in the email we send out afterwards with the materials. So what can you do? It's a lot of information I just threw at everybody, and hopefully that helps you start to think about how you're going to plan your work. But how can you get involved, and how can you get involved now? We know you're really anxious to get materials from us to use in your work. We will share information and content with you, primarily through our website at 2020census.gov/partners. To ensure you keep getting the latest information from us, including announcements about when new materials are available, please visit our website where you can sign up for our email list. When you visit census.gov, a little box will pop up. You can enter in your information, and you can actually select what topics you want to receive information from us about. But right now is the best time for you to start sharing information about the 2020 census with your audiences, your customers, your stakeholders, your neighbors. You can post information in newsletters, social media accounts. If your organization is giving a speech or having a meeting, that's the place to start talking about the 2020 census. We have several resources that are already up on our website now that can help you do that. Again, visit 2020census.gov/partners. If you click on promotional materials, you'll see what's available. And please check back regularly. We will keep adding materials. We are producing a lot right now. If there's an organization who might want to join as a partner and isn't already a partner, you can get in touch with your local partnership specialist by visiting census.gov/partners/join.html. You can actually also request us to have one of our data experts visit your organization, your meeting, your event, your community meeting, and they will walk you through Census Bureau data, how to access it, and how to use it to help apply for grants to help your community. Not only does this immediately start to get people engaged in 2020 census, but it's a great way to demonstrate the utility of Census Bureau data and start making connections to the importance of the 2020 census. To make a request for one of our data experts to visit you, you can visit census.gov/academy. Another thing I recommend you consider, I've been to a few of these and found them incredibly, very inspirational actually. If you want to connect with other organizations or businesses in your area that are also interested in the 2020 census, you should actually think about hosting or co-hosting what we call a Census Solutions Workshop. These workshops basically bring together diverse organizations and people to brainstorm creative solutions to local 2020 census challenges, identifying new ways to motivate response in your community. We've had fabulous feedback about the types of projects and relationships between organizations that are ignited in these workshops. You can have a create-a-thon where you can gather everyone to create digital content about the 2020 census, and they can be thematic. So can the Census Solutions workshops. So you can focus, we had one recently on LGBT. So a lot of content was created for that audience by external groups with the Census Bureau there as subject matter experts. They're very exciting days and very inspirational days. On our website, census.gov/partners, you can also find a toolkit that'll help you start to think about how to host and plan a Census Solutions workshop. And you can also find really incredible tools like what we call our Response Outreach Area Mapper. This is a tool that allows you to access information on what areas in your community are hard to count, where there are low response rates typically, and those are the areas that need the most outreach and education about the 2020 census, so we can ensure that we have an active participation and an accurate count. We will also provide information on how to access that tool and all of this other wonderful information I'm throwing at you in the materials we send out after this webinar. Right now, one of our huge focus areas is on hiring. We have flexible, well-paying local jobs. We hire people to work in their communities. We ask that you spread the word about those job opportunities, and if you know anyone who is interested in applying, please direct them to our hiring website, which is 2020census.gov/jobs. That's all I have for you today, but I'd like to take a couple questions, and with that, I'll turn it over to Misty, and we'll see what questions we have come in. I think we have a few minutes for some.
All right, thanks, Jen. We have had a lot of questions come in, and as I mentioned at the start of the webinar, our team is trying very hard to get responses back. We will answer a few of your questions here now. So the first question that we had come in was, can partners help members of the public respond to the 2020 census?
This is an excellent question. Thank you to whoever asked it. We've actually been getting this question a lot, and it's a very important one. As we get closer to the 2020 census, what's great about the 2020 census is the use of technology actually provides partners new ways to help the public respond and new ways to engage with the public. You might recall that in past censuses, it was required to have there's an ID code on the mail that you got from the Census Bureau, and you needed that ID code to be able to respond. That is not the case in the 2020 census, and that provides a lot of flexibility to both the responding public and also to partners trying to support them. So I think, Misty, if it's okay, I'll take a second to give you a few examples of how partners can support response, and then I'm actually going to use this as an opportunity to highlight a few ways we would prefer partners do not support response. Partners should absolutely provide language assistance by helping non-English speaking individuals log into the website and navigate to the page that is in their language. They should absolutely help individuals with disabilities respond. They can provide computers and tablets at conferences or public events. They can set up kiosks. You can have devices available at community centers, healthcare facilities, shopping areas, or other locations where people will gather, where you can connect with them and help them respond to the 2020 census online. Like I said, there are a couple things I wanted to mention that we do not want partners to do for security and confidentiality reasons. One of those is that we would discourage anyone from going door to door to collect information for the 2020 census, whether that is state official, municipal governments, partners, tribal officials. And the reason for that is we don't want to create confusion for households that are already responded, or those who have to be interviewed by census takers because they haven't responded to the census. Door-to-door canvassing might actually discourage response because it elevates concerns by the public of a potential scam, intrusion, or any kind of nefarious activity. A key component of our communications effort is to raise awareness about how to identify an official census taker, and if the public is not sure who is knocking on their door, we're afraid they won't answer. We also want to make sure everyone knows that they should not be creating websites or apps designed to collect 2020 census data. The Census Bureau is the only one collecting that information, and it's the only way we can guarantee someone's privacy and confidentiality. Other organizations should not collect data over the phone with the intention of submitting it to the Census Bureau. And no one should encourage person A to respond on person B's behalf if they do not live in the same household. So what I mean by that is it is not legal for someone to fill out a census on their neighbor's behalf, even if they believe that they did not respond. So hopefully whoever asked the question, that's a lot of information, but that was a really important question.
All right, great. Well, the next question we have heard quite a bit, so I won't be surprised to tell you that we had a couple people submit and ask, if someone skips a question, will they receive a visit from a census taker?
Yes, that is also a great question, and one I've gotten a lot, so thank you to whoever asked that. If you do not respond, or you don't respond to every question, you increase the likelihood of an in-person visit from a census taker. So the best way to make sure you don't receive that visit is to respond early or respond completely.
Great, great. And then we also had a question, when will we know who gets a paper form up front? You'd mentioned that earlier, and there was some question about when they might actually know.
That is a great question. Again, just to refresh everyone's memory, that was earlier in the webinar. About 80% of the country will receive an initial invitation that does not include a paper form. 20% of the country will receive an invitation that does. So in terms of figuring out who's in that 80% and who's in that 20%, we have not finalized those areas yet. We want to make sure that we wait as long as possible to do that so that we are operating with the most up-to-date and accurate information. And we want to do that so that we can best serve you and the public. I know that it will be helpful to a lot of you to have that information so you can plan your outreach, but it'll be sometime in the fall where we will release information on which areas fall into the 80% or which areas fall into the 20%.
All right, fantastic. Well, that is the time that we have for today. I do want to highlight some of the information on the Contact Us screen. We'll have a couple screens here. So first, keep an eye out for the follow-up and the resources from us. Jen had provided a lot of references to materials, and we will make sure that you get copies of the materials, the links to those materials, so that you can peruse those and take a look at those on your own time. For any organizations that are interested in partnering with us, Please definitely pay attention to this information that's here on this last slide. We will also send this information in the follow-up materials to today's webinar. I know that not all of you will look at this and inherently know which region you're a part of, and so we do have our final image here is actually our regional office boundaries. So if you can't see your state immediately, like I said, just take a look, pull that up. It's available both on our website and it will be in the materials that that you receive as follow-up. So that will help you get in contact with the right region to be able to help you to partner with us. So thank you again for your time. We appreciate it. We hope that this has been helpful information for you all, and we look forward to continuing to provide information to you to help you support our efforts in the future. Thank you.